Good evening and welcome to our second parent podcast of the week around apprenticeships. So hopefully today you will find a lot of information around apprenticeships available. We will hear from a few guest speakers as well through videos and share with you lots of information. So just some housekeeping before we start. The podcast is being recorded, so it will be available to watch back at a later date. We will let you know when the Q&A box is open nearer the end of the briefing, just so you can ask some questions. Not all questions will be published if they are a duplicate or personal to individuals. But for in-depth queries, please email us directly at KentChoices@theeducationpeople.org. So just an introduction to who we are. So we are the Kent Choices team, and we're kind of focused on post-16 transition support. Today with me, I've got my colleague Zara and myself, Owen Bartholomew. The education people have delivered over 400 hours across Kent schools this past academic year. So Zara may be a familiar face to some of the students in schools as well. So we're hopeful that this podcast will help you with understanding what an apprenticeship is, looking at the levels and industries available, providing direction on where to search for apprenticeships, hearing from an apprentice, hearing from an employer, and answering any additional questions you may have at the end of the briefing through the Q&A box. At this point, I'm going to pass over to my colleague Zara, who will take you through the next few slides.
Thank you. So some of you might have attended our part 1 podcast on Tuesday evening, where we looked at all the different options that are available to your young person after year 11. But in today's podcast, we're going to focus solely all about apprenticeships, because it can be the more complicated option, the one that people find a little bit more tricky. So we wanted to make sure that you've got all the information to help your young person with their next step if this is what they are deciding. So first, just to highlight to you the Youth Voice Census. This happens every year, and it's to get young people's opinions on kind of what's happening with their lives and in their educational journey. But I just wanted to highlight this one particular statement from this year's census, that overall young people are most likely to seek career support from teachers, parents and guardians and friends. So really just to highlight your importance in your young person's journey, and to thank you for coming along tonight to make sure that you've got the information so that you can pass that on to your young person. So some myths about apprenticeships then, that they are only for people who don't get good GCSEs or A-level results, that the pay isn't very good, that they are only for practical jobs, and that they aren't a proper job. These are some things that you might hear in the kind of conversation about apprenticeships, but hopefully by the end of this evening, we can have a kind of a good conversation about what an apprenticeship is, so you can dispel these myths and, as I said, help your young person on their next steps of their journey if this is what they are considering. So what is an apprenticeship then? So an apprenticeship is a combination of work and training. It's their opportunity to earn and to learn with an 80 to 20% split. So 80% of the time they spend in paid employment. The other 20% of their time they spend working towards a formal qualification. Within that 80% paid employment, they will be with an employer. They will have a job title, job descriptions, things that they are working on, responsibilities, projects, just like any other paid employment. So it's a very hands-on way for them to learn, because they will be embedded within that industry, within that workplace, giving them the opportunity to really start themselves out in that career sector. The other 20% of their time they will spend studying towards a recognised qualification. Typically, that 20% you will find 1 day a week, but you may also find what we call block training. So it might be that they study for a week and then work for 4 weeks. But the most typical way to find it is 4 days a week working, 1 day a week studying. Within that training side of it, whilst they're working towards their formal qualification, they will be working on topics that relate to what they're doing in their work placement, and they will be assessed through coursework and exams, just like any other qualification that they've previously studied for. And that qualification can take them on to whatever their next steps might be. So they might choose to take that qualification onto other employment or onto further education if they wish. Now, apprenticeship comes in lots of different levels. They range from level 2 all the way up to level 7. And for this reason, it might be something that they want to do at 16, but it equally might be an education route that they want to do later on down the line. If your young person is in year 11 and they are thinking about it as an option after they've finished, they might be looking at a level 2 opportunity or a level 3 opportunity. Alternatively, they might want to go on to sixth form or to college first for a couple of years, and then they might want to do an apprenticeship instead of going to university, in which case they would be looking at your 4, 5 or 6 level apprenticeships. Another way they might want to do it is that they might want to go to university and then come back and study their apprenticeship for their level 7, which is the equivalent of a master's degree. So there's lots of different ways and different levels that you can study an apprenticeship, and there's no right or wrong order for your young person. Within apprenticeships, there's lots of different industries. Going back to those myths, stereotypically people think that they are just for practical careers, so things like hairdressing or construction. Now, apprenticeships are really good routes to get into those sectors, and that could be a really good option for them. But there are lots and lots of different sectors that you can get an apprenticeship in, and there are over 700 different ones in the UK. So those stereotypically high-paying competitive careers, things like accounting, engineering, finance, law, these are also all options that you could look at for apprenticeships. So it is really about doing your research to see if it could be an option for your young person, no matter what career or industry that they are interested in pursuing in the future. And some really big companies who hire apprentices now. And stereotypically, again, some people might think that you can only get apprenticeships in your smaller local companies, but actually your big companies are also looking to take on apprentices so that they can attract that new talent into their company. And it's these big companies that can offer some really big financial packages for those apprentices and some good incentives for them to join. So because it is a paid employment, your young person will get paid for their apprenticeship, and the minimum wage for that is currently £7.55 an hour. They will get paid for the 80% of the time that they spend working, but they will also get paid for that 20% of the time that they spend studying as well. As with any minimum wage of the government, that is reviewed every April. So if your young person is currently in year 11, by the time they finish that academic year, that hourly wage might have gone up from there. It's also worth remembering that with an apprenticeship, the qualification is never paid for by the young person or yourself as a parent. So no matter what level apprenticeship they do, be that level 2 or level 7, they will never have to pay that fee. So they could do a level 6 degree apprenticeship, but they wouldn't have to pay that university tuition. That would be covered either by the government or by the employer that they are working for, and they wouldn't have to pay that money back at any point. So although money is a really big incentive, what else do they gain from that apprenticeship? Well, they gain all of that practical skills because they're being kind of introduced into that sector. They can get a really good feel about what they're doing within that industry and the skills that they need to make them successful within that. And it's a really good way for them to start off in a quite supportive environment. So within their apprenticeship, within their employer, they will be given a professional mentor, someone that they can go to ask questions about their day-to-day job or about that qualification that they're studying from. And as I mentioned earlier, they will get a recognised qualification from that apprenticeship. So after they've finished, they might choose to take that their employment elsewhere, or they might choose to continuing studying in a different education environment. At the end of their apprenticeship, they might have a graduation ceremony, and this might be through their training provider themselves, but Kent and Medway also run a joint one, and it's sponsored by lots of local companies. And that was actually coincidentally today, and it's a lovely celebration for friends and family to really recognise that qualification that that young person has been working towards. So that was a brief introduction about what an apprenticeship is, but we thought it'd be really helpful for you to hear from an apprentice herself. So this is Amna's story, and without embarrassing her too much, she was actually at the graduation ceremony today, so it was wonderful to see her celebrating the end of her qualification. And she's just going to give you a little bit of an insight from her apprenticeship journey.
Hi, Amna. Thanks so much for your time and for coming along today to share your experiences as an apprentice. Firstly, if you're happy to start by telling us the name of the apprenticeship qualification you've been studying and then sort of what type of organisation or sector you've been working in.
Hi Liberty, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to do this. I'm currently enrolled in a school business professional apprenticeship, and this apprenticeship is with the education sector, and I primarily work for and in a school.
Brilliant. And if you could just tell us a bit about your education journey leading up to sort of starting your apprenticeship, what made you decide the apprenticeship route was right for you, and also whether you considered any sort of alternative routes.
Well, prior to my apprenticeship, I did my GCSEs and A levels, and after finishing those, I plan on going to uni to further study more what I did during my A levels. However, I decided that I wanted to take a gap year and gain some experience. And to me, I thought the best route for me to take would be an apprenticeship because I would be gaining experience and I would still be studying at the same time. So they go really well together, hand in hand together. And so after this apprenticeship is over, I still want to go to uni. And after finishing this apprenticeship, I want to go to uni to study business management and data analytics.
That's great. And where did you see the apprenticeship advertised?
I saw it on the gov.uk website.
And did you look at any other websites or do any other research?
Yeah, so when I decided that I wanted to do an apprenticeship, I spoke to a lot of people who I knew were doing an apprenticeship, and I asked them what sort of websites they looked for. They just said that go online, search up the field you're trying to look for, search up apprenticeships after that, and then a lot of different websites would pop up. The top one was the gov.uk website, and when I went on that, it had all of the apprenticeships that were being offered all throughout the UK, what you would need to do those apprenticeships, what qualifications you needed, what they were looking for. So it had everything all in one place, all the apprenticeships. It was really easy to navigate through the website.
And when you saw the apprenticeship that you've actually managed to achieve, what was the application process like for you?
I had to fill out an application form and then do a series of interviews, one with the training provider and one with my employing company. After completing those, I had to do a couple of initial assessments, which would determine whether I needed to do English and maths alongside my apprenticeship or not.
Brilliant. And can you just tell us a bit about your role as an apprentice? What sort of things have you been doing?
So as I'm doing a school business professional apprenticeship, I work alongside the school business manager, and I do tons of the things she does, but I mainly look at all of the financing for the schools. So I do, or I look at all of the emails, I do all of the purchases, orders, invoicing, I do all of their batch payments for them, I do all of their VAT returns, and pretty much everything finance I do.
And is that kind of what you expected that the apprenticeship would be like?
Yes, yes. And that is something that I was interested in as well. So it worked out really well.
Brilliant. And so who was your training provider, and how did you kind of find learning with them? And what was the process like in terms of doing that learning? Was it sort of in person? Did they come to your workplace? Were there online training?
So my training providers are a company called Profile Development and Training Limited. And they were so supportive and so helpful throughout my whole apprenticeship. And they were always there in case I needed extra support or extra help, whether it be about any assignments or whether if it was just I was feeling down about an assignment I was given or something I didn't understand. My meetings took place online via Teams once a month, or more, depending on whether I needed extra help or not. In a normal meeting, we would firstly go through the assignment that I'd done prior in the previous month, and then we would talk about my work and then any improvements that I needed to work on. After that, my tutor would teach me all of the new content that I had to learn, and then she would give me my assignment for the month, and I had a month to complete those. And the questions that I was given on these range from general knowledge questions to work specific questions as well.
Fantastic. And so you talked about completing your apprenticeship and maybe going to university afterwards. Was that what you were hoping to do when you started the apprenticeship, or have your plans changed? Where's the apprenticeship taking you?
So that was my initial plan. It was always to do the apprenticeship and then go to uni, and that's something that I still really want to do. I really like all of the experience I've gained. I think I've learned a lot, and not only school-wise, but I think I've learned a lot from the apprenticeship as to how to work with other people, how to work with certain types of peoples, how life is in an office-like environment. So I really hope to take all of these qualities and everything I've learned, all the skills I've learned, and go to uni and hopefully get a degree and do a job in the sector again one day.
And do you have any advice or top tips for anyone thinking about applying for an apprenticeship?
My top tips would be just go for it. It is honestly a very, very wonderful and giving experience. It's working and learning at the same time, so you don't feel it. You're gaining life skills. You're meeting all of these new people, and then you're going to learn so much from them. They'll always be there for support and to help you out. And it's such a giving and fun experience. So I would 100% say if you feel you want to go down that apprenticeship route, do not second guess yourself, just do it.
And do you have 3 words that you think you could use to describe your apprenticeship journey?
Oh, good question. Okay, so I think my 3 words would be growth, rewarding, and insightful. Because it's been like I've learned so much and I've grown so much throughout this. It's such a rewarding experience. It's so much fun, and it's so insightful because I'm learning every day. It's just a really, really amazing experience.
That sounds fantastic. Thank you so much, Amna, for your time, and we really wish you all the best for the future.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for your time and for firsting, and then sort of what type of organisation or sector you've been working in.
Hi, Liberty.
So hopefully that was helpful, as I said, to hear from an apprentice themselves, and kind of seeing what order she did it in, and just to really prove that there is no right or wrong order to where your young person might fit an apprenticeship into their career journey. So moving on to searching and applying then, where is it that your young person needs to be looking if they are looking for these opportunities? There's a couple of websites on the screen now, and these ones that you might want to go away and become a little bit more familiar with as you kind of search with your young person. But just to highlight a few of them, starting off with Amazing Apprenticeships. Now, Amazing Apprenticeships is a really good website if your young person is right at the start of their apprenticeship journey. Perhaps they've identified that an apprenticeship would really suit their learning style, but they're not sure what it is that they want to go into yet. Amazing Apprenticeship splits it into different subjects. So perhaps they've got subjects in school that they know that they are good at and that they are interested in, but they're not sure what work placements that they can get around that. Amazing Apprenticeships can help you sit through and kind of divide those different jobs that fit into those subjects, and it might give them some inspiration of different job titles and apprenticeships that they can look at. Amazing Apprenticeships also publish a list of higher and degree apprenticeships twice a year. And the most recent one has come out just 2 days ago. So if you are looking for a higher or degree apprenticeship, this is a really good place to start because it pulls together all of those national opportunities to give you a really good idea of who's hiring and what apprenticeships are out there. Even if your young person is in year 11 and they're thinking of getting an apprenticeship in a couple of years' time instead of going to university, just becoming familiar with what those apprenticeships look like, what those entry requirements are, who are those big companies are hiring, are really going to give you an advantage when it comes to them making their applications. Another place to have a look for different vacancies is on the KentChoices website. So going into KentChoices and clicking on the apprenticeship tab, and that will allow you to search for an apprenticeship vacancy that is relevant for your young person. You can filter it down by how far they were willing to travel, what different industries they're interested in, what sectors they're interested in, and what levels might be more appropriate for them. I would just say be very careful with the search bar. So let's say, for example, your young person would like to work with young people, they would like to work in a nursery. If they type in nursery, but perhaps the employer has listed it as early years, that apprenticeship might not come up. So just bear that in mind when you are using that search tool, and keep it nice and vague, and perhaps use a couple of keywords to make sure that you're not missing any opportunities. When your young person does find an opportunity that they would like to apply for, and the majority of them will follow the same format, and they will have a job description like the one on the screen. So it will start with a summary of what they would be doing in that position, but it will also break down the skills and qualifications that they need for that particular apprenticeship, the hours, the wage, the start date, and the level. So it's worth becoming familiar with job descriptions with your young person so that they are prepared when they come to make these applications. With apprenticeships, there are no set entry requirements. The employer and the training provider will decide that depending on that vacancy. So it will vary depending on the apprenticeship, the level and the sector. So as I said, it's worth becoming familiar to have a little look at what skills and qualifications they are looking for. We also just wanted to highlight to you our supported employment service. Now, this is a separate department within the education people, and they work with young people and adults above the age of 16 who have SEND needs and EHCP plans. And they can support your young person into education, into employment and into apprenticeships from the searching stage to the applying stage and to getting settled into their employment. So if they are thinking about an apprenticeship, but perhaps they do have a few more barriers, it might be worth reaching out to the supported employment team to see what help that they can offer. But as I said, they do support young people all the way up to adults. So it might be something that they come back to later on in their career. If your young person does have an EHCP plan, another place I would recommend you have a look at is the KCC SEND Information Hub, just for any more information that might be relevant to them and their journey. So if your young person is in year 11, what does this year ahead look like for them? And what should they be doing at different points in the year? Well, now is the time for them to start exploring those different career pathways that they might be interested in, what sectors and jobs might be well suited to them. The National Careers Service and Prospects are two really good websites that they can start at, and it breaks down lots of different jobs, telling them what they would do day to day, what those entry requirements are, and just lots of information that might help them make that decision. Both of those websites also have a little quiz on there where they can answer questions about their skills and what they want from a workplace, and it can suggest different job roles from there. So if they're really unsure of what they want to do, that's perfectly normal, but that might help them kind of refine it down a little bit. Another thing to start thinking about is building those experiences and skills. When you come to apply for an apprenticeship, because it is a job role, they will normally be required to fill out a CV. So the more skills and experiences, work experience that they can get to fill out the CV, the better position they will be in when it comes to applying for those vacancies. Start having a look on different vacancy websites to see what opportunities are out there, but also approach local employers. You don't have to wait for a vacancy to be advertised. You can just send that employer a letter or an email, let them know what kind of journey your young person's on, what are they interested in, what skills do they have, and just ask them to let them know if there's any apprenticeship opportunities coming up at any point soon. With apprenticeships, there is no set timeline in terms of when they will be advertised and when they start, but we would recommend, if you are looking for an apprenticeship for your young person after year 11, that you start looking for vacancies from January through to July if you're looking for that September start. And remember, you can make multiple applications, so you can apply for as many apprenticeships as your young person is interested in. We also really encourage young people to make an application to a college or a sixth form as a backup, just in case something doesn't go their way. Perhaps they don't find the right apprenticeship vacancy for them. If you were in the podcast on Tuesday, we were speaking about how quickly college places can fill up. So it's really important they have that backup application just in case they need it. I also just wanted to highlight to you a different option that your young person might want to consider if an apprenticeship doesn't work out for them, or perhaps the information we've shared this evening, they've decided that it's something they want to do later on. Your young person might want to consider what we call a T-level, and lots of different colleges offer T-levels and some sixth forms will as well. So a T-level is essentially an apprenticeship, but it is flipped on its head. So you've still got that 80 to 20% split, but instead of that 80% of the time being spent in the workplace, that 80% is spent in the classroom. So the majority is in that classroom environment, but they are still getting that advantage of that work placement. So they have a 45-day placement within their T-level course, and it is equivalent to 3 A-levels. So just something else for them to consider if it is that workplace industry placement that they are interested in. So my colleague Owen is now going to open the question box. So if you do have any additional questions, please pop them in there. Just a reminder to keep them confidential, as we won't be able to answer anything that isn't. But if you do have a more in-depth query, then please get in touch with us on the inbox that's on the screen now. That's KentChoices@theeducationpeople.org, and myself or one of the team will get back to you as soon as we can. Whilst you are popping those questions in the Q&A box then, we're just going to hear from an employer to again get a different perspective.
Hi, Sophia. Thanks for talking to us today about apprenticeships and your experiences as an employer. I just wanted to start by asking if you could just tell us a bit about your organisation and the type of work that you do.
Yeah, of course. So we're an end-to-end manufacturing business mainly. We create connectors, cables, and just other items that are used in critical applications. So it could be anywhere from connectors in your phone, it could be electronic flight systems, defense systems, commercial and military aerospace. And there's lots of different things that we get involved in and make connectors for. And I currently work for Amphenol Interconnect, which is based in Whitstable in Kent.
And so what sort of type of apprenticeships are you able to offer?
Well, we currently have 15 apprentices at the moment within the business. It varies, to be honest. It could be engineering level 3. We've got some on our HNC level 4. We have a toolroom apprentice. We also have CNC machinists. And then we've also got some apprenticeships that we have for our existing staff. So those that are in team leadership roles. We have some team leadership apprentices. And we've also offered IT and finance apprenticeships at varying different levels.
And where do you normally advertise your apprenticeship opportunities?
All of our vacancies will always be on the Gov Apprenticeship website.
And do you advertise at certain times of the year?
So it's usually around about March. We'll start the interview process and shortlisting process in May, June. And we do that so that we're ready for a kind of either a summer start or a September start.
And when you're getting applications in, what are you kind of looking for in an applicant or an apprentice?
Well, I think it really depends on what apprenticeship they're applying for. But I love to see an applicant that's researched us as a business. They know a little bit about what we manufacture. But I also give a lot of merit to those that have got a real interest in engineering. They may not have qualification or experience, but, they might have enjoyed tinkering with their dad's car or they've got a hobby that includes fixing lots of things, for example. So I guess not all of our best engineers came to us with qualifications. Some come to us with a desire to learn and a keen interest in all things practical. So they're the real traits that I look for.
And so after someone's made an application, can you just tell us a little bit about the interview process? If they get offered an interview, what does that process usually look like?
The first stage after shortlisting, March, April time, we invite our chosen applicants to an assessment centre. So that's our college based in Rochester. We invite them in for the afternoon and we'll start with a little assessment, some competency tests. So that will look at maths, critical thinking, and just a few other sort of elements. After that, we tend to take them on a little bit of a tour of the college so that they can see what the college is about. And then we complete usually an engineering-based activity game. And we'll use that as an opportunity to get to know the applicants a little bit better and maybe what type of learners they are. And then after that, we will shortlist again. And then we'll invite the successful candidates back again for a second interview. But this time we invite them back on site to our actual manufacturing offices in Whitstable. Again, we usually start with a little bit of a tour around the building. We show them what we're all about and what we make. And then what we do is we tend to conduct a short one-to-one interview, no more than around 15 minutes. And then in the afternoon, we tend to complete another critical thinking game. This one tests the level of perseverance and problem solving that someone might have. So it is quite a rigorous interview process, but we do that because it ensures that we're investing in the right candidates from the start. Plus, it also gives the applicants plenty of opportunity to ask questions and to determine if it's the right environment for them.
And for the apprentices that have already been employed by yourselves and gone through their apprenticeship qualification, what have generally been the outcomes? What have been the next steps in their career path within your organisation?
Most of the time they're then with us on permanent contracts. They look at other areas of the business. We have some that have completed their apprenticeship and have stayed in the area that they were in, and they're just doing CPD to gradually progress. And we've got others that have expressed an interest in doing higher education, their HNC, HND, university, and we've supported them with that, because it means that we're investing in them, but they're also investing in us. They've shown dedication to Amphenol, and we're supporting them with their further studies. So we're showing the dedication in return, I suppose.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And thank you very much for your time and sharing your experiences and knowledge of taking on apprentices.
That's all right. Thank you for having me.
So if you are perhaps in a position where you have a business yourself, and perhaps you want to take on an apprentice, be that your young person or a family member, or just a general apprentice, then just a reminder that you can reach out to ourselves at the Education People, and we can talk you through this process, through finding a training provider, and kind of applying for any government bursaries or support in funding. So do reach out to us on the Apprentice Kent at the educationpeople.org email address, and we'll be more than happy to help you with that. And when you signed up to this apprenticeship, again, we asked you some questions that you wanted answering within this podcast. And so we just wanted to pull out a couple of these before we move on to the Q&A box. And so one of the key ones, well, what are the timelines for finding the apprenticeship? So again, there is no set timeline for finding an apprenticeship, as they can be advertised and start at any point. If you are in year 11 or perhaps in year 13 now and you're looking for that September start, we advise that you start looking from January, and just set a time to regularly look once a week to make sure that you're not missing any opportunities. If you are looking for those higher degree apprenticeships, if you're in year 13, then sometimes those bigger companies can start even earlier, because they can have a slightly longer application process. So really, the sooner the better. What are the entry requirements? So with an apprenticeship, the entry requirements are decided by the employer and by the training provider, and so it will depend based on the level and the industry that you are applying for, but it will be listed on the job description, so it will vary from apprenticeship to apprenticeship. What is the best route if my young person would like to be a? If they've got their heart set on a particular career, we really would recommend going onto the National Careers Service, as it's got lots of details of different job roles on there. And if they click into the How to Become section, it will list the different career routes that they can go down, and list the different apprenticeship standards that are relevant for that particular job role. So that might be a really good place for them to start. And how do you make your application stand out? Apprenticeships can be really competitive opportunities, so it's really important that each of those applications are tailored. So having a look in the job description and picking out those key skills that they are looking for, and ensuring that they are showing and not telling. So rather than just telling the employer what skills they have, give them those examples to back it up. What have they done inside and outside of schools to really demonstrate those skills? And can you contact the company themselves? If you see a job advert for an apprenticeship go up, if they're a hiring manager listed on that apprenticeship, send them an email and ask for a phone number. See if you can have a little chat about that apprenticeship before you submit your application. Anything that can make your young person's name stand out when they go through that shortlisting process will be an advantage for them. So I'm now going to ask Owen to read out any questions that we've had in the Q&A box, please.
Yeah, hi Zara. Yeah, we've had a few. Some of them are specific, so I would tell them people to email us directly at KentChoices at theeducationpeople.org. But we have had some quite common questions come up, and I think one of them you answered around the minimum requirements for an apprenticeship. Obviously, they are in the job advert listing. Another one was about studying university and apprenticeships at the same time.
Yeah, so if you did a degree level apprenticeship, your young person would be paired with a university so that they would study at that university, or perhaps that they would do it online for that 20% of the time. And they would come out with a qualification of that degree level that is paired with that university at the end of it. And even when your young person goes to university and does a full-time course, they might only be in 2 to 3 days a week, but that full-time course is separate from that apprenticeship.
Excellent. Thank you, Sarah. Another one was, how do I apply if my young person hasn't got their GCSE results?
And so it's very similar to if they were applying for a sixth form or a college, you would just pop in their predicted grades onto their CV.
And another one was, are T levels paid?
Unfortunately not, no, T levels aren't paid, so that work placement within the T level would be voluntary.
And we've had a couple of people questioning about they've missed the start of this podcast, and can they view it later?
Yep, absolutely. So the recording will be sent out to you if on the email that you signed up on, but it will also be available in the resources section under parents and carers on KentChoices, either tomorrow or at the start of next week.
Excellent. Thank you, Sarah. And obviously, if we didn't get around to your question, please do email us directly so we can answer that for you.
Perfect. Thank you. And so just to highlight our final podcast in the series at the end of the academic year in June. So if your young person is still feeling unsure on their options at that point, please feel free to join us, and we'll just be discussing different support available at that time in the year. And so as I said, that will be available on KentChoices. Please join us for that if you wish. So that's it for tonight. I hope it has been helpful, and thank you again for coming along. And just to reiterate, the recording will be on KentChoices in the resources section. But other than that, I really wish your young person the best of luck on their journey, and I wish you all a lovely evening. Thank you for attending tonight.